Hi, I'm Gabby,
And I'm Rowan, and welcome to the next narratives.
where we use stories to bring people together across different belief systems. So, this week's episode is a wonderful conversation that I had with Chris. She came over to my home, and it was just absolutely delightful. We talked about like loving the darkness of humans, which I think is a really beautiful thing. And if you're turned off by that, then I really invite you to listen to the context of it because it's really awesome.
Yeah.
And really accepting the good, the bad, and the ugly of humanity, and her experience through that, both in herself and by working with people with different backgrounds as a psychotherapist.
Yeah, and a few triggers to be aware of during this episode is there are some discussions about suicidal thoughts as well as discussions around addiction. So, as always, take care of yourself as you listen.
Yes. So enjoy this episode with Chris, and we'll see you again here on Monday.
All right, so good morning. Chris, such a lovely human. I met you at a party, and I think it was so funny that our mutual friend Anjali was like, "You two need to talk." And we were like, "Okay, we don't know why, so I guess I'll just tell you about me and see where some of those intersections lie." And it's been so beautiful. We've only really connected a handful of times, and I think you're such a wonderful person with a huge heart, and I've already felt so much relation to experiences that you've shared and just some of our default tendencies as humans and how we show up in the world. So if you were to bump into someone in line at a coffee shop and for whatever reason they asked you, "Hey, who are you?" What would you say?
Oh boy. Like the superficial answer is I think typically people default to what they do rather than who they are. So I'll start with that. I'm a psychotherapist. I started working as a counselor in 2002. I finished school, and I always gravitated towards trying to figure people out. As a small little girl, I was terrified of humans. I was extremely shy. Lots of people say that they're shy, and I think it was very it was very much a part of my identity, and I was told I was shy, so it just reinforced it. But humans just fascinated me, I think, and scared the crap out of me. And went through a series of different careers. And when I started counseling school, I thought this is what I've been wanting to do. It was probably reinforced by the fact that I was stuck in a counselor's office at 8 years old anyway. So I think I'm one of those people that sort of sit in the periphery and observe and try and figure people out. And I'm inspired by the darkness of humans, but I'm inspired by their stories of perseverance and how they keep going, their resilience. I'm amazed at the things that I've heard in my lifetime of what humans have been able to survive and grow from. And I think I'm just someone who I've been described as having fierce compassion when I sit with humans and just with myself, I think. And just still trying to figure out who I am. Every single person I meet and every single person I work with, I think opens up another window for me as far as not completely understanding who I am
Mm.
and getting to see another perspective.
I love that. There were so many little
Mhm.
nuggets in there that stood out
Mhm.
to me. Is one, the first thing you said is I think we often default to our job, which
Mhm.
I think about that with that question.
Mhm.
And that's why I ask, who are you?
Yes.
And so many people answer with job
Mhm.
or are kind of like, well, so do you want me to say what I do?
Yeah.
I'm like,
You
well,
can say whatever you want.
we do tend to tie a lot of our identity to our work.
Mhm.
And then also I think it's a reflection of our culture
Yes.
too, to be like, well, what do you mean? And I'd be like, well, what lights you up? How do you
Mhm.
spend your time?
Mhm.
Like, what? What? What do you mean? So you want to know what I do for work? Like, if that's what you want to share, yeah. But if that's not what lights you up, then
Yeah.
what does light you up?
Mhm. Mhm.
And then I loved how you said you're inspired. You're so moved or like inspired by the darkness of humans.
Yes.
I have never heard anything phrased like that. And I
Oh.
think it's so cool. And I'm
Oh,
like,
thank God. There are some people I don't think that like that answer coming out of me. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and it's actually so the episode that'll come out before yours,
Mhm.
my dear friend Rowan and I, we had done like we're doing bonus content, and so we'll have conversations, just kind of digesting like the themes of these conversations, and
Yeah.
so we had talked about the like nuances of humans and the
Mhm.
messiness of humans.
Yeah, I love it.
Because I had received a lot of critiques. I say a lot, it was like 3 critiques of like in my first season when I introduced myself and I said, I'm a lover of learning, a seeker of belonging, and a cultivator of community. And then I said, I'm a messy and I'm an imperfect human.
Yes.
And just trying to make this world a better place.
Mhm.
And I've had a few people, even my husband included, that were like, well, why do you have to say you're messy?
Oh,
And I'm like,
interesting.
being human is
I
messy.
like it.
And also like,
Mhm.
I think what felt empowering for me in stating that in an empowering way
Mhm.
is like, I am imperfect
Mhm.
and that's okay.
Yes.
And so is every other human. Like, just because
Mhm.
I'm hosting this
Mhm.
or that I'm getting into leading personal development work or, that I have degrees, whatever,
Mhm.
doesn't mean that that I don't also have darkness as a
Yes.
human. Like we all do. And I think that's part of the complexity
Mhm.
and the beauty in the human experience
Mhm.
is the imperfections.
Yeah.
Being a recovering perfectionist.
Yes, exactly.
And so I think it's really cool how you say that.
Yeah.
And it also spoke to a past version of me who was like very black and white, that I've joked with DJ to say, like, if I actually went along with my list of non-negotiables in a partner, he and I wouldn't have made it to our first date. And
Nice.
like,
Yeah.
to discover that like we as people are imperfect and
Mhm.
to create these parameters, like, yes, there are important boundaries to set with people,
Mhm.
but to say like, I'm not going to talk to someone if they've ever done a bad thing in their life. Like
Yes.
we've
Yeah.
all have, and if we're saying
Mhm.
we're not, we're lying to ourselves.
Yeah, yeah,
I think.
yeah.
And so I just
Oh, I
love
like
that.
that. I like that you've brought up dating because I think that as someone my age, I'm 57, and so uh, dating as an X generation human is trippy and awful. And the perfectionism that I work most of my clientele as a therapist are 20 and 30-year-olds. I love them. I love the generations that are younger than me. I feel like I I, I resonate with a lot of their thinking easier. Um, and so unfortunately it makes things difficult for me to relate sometimes to people that are my age. And seeking out partnership, um, and almost seeking out partnership to try and compensate for what you see as imperfect in yourself can be exhausting. And with a therapist mind, by now, after doing this for 20 something years, I can't turn that off. I wish I could, but seeing these ways that I, might connect with someone and the attributes that they have and my attributes, and um, dismissing people before, even finding connection is really common, I think, for my generation too, especially when people have a few divorces under their belt and they're trying to manage kids that are really blowing out left and right. But I think I am probably getting on a little bit of a tangent. But
okay.
But what you said in there also around the darkness, I mean, I've found at times that I think what's kept me doing my work for as long as I have as a therapist is gravitating towards people who have lived some pretty dark experiences. And I almost feel comfort in that when I've done it through the years. When I don't find that in someone's history, I get really nervous because I start to think, how is this person going to see my darkness or the ways that I've been broken? Are they going to reject me? Which plays again with that perfectionism. I don't know if I'm showing up perfect enough for this person, but this guy over here who's done 15 years time because he was, in the cartel selling drugs, and that guy I can sit with because I know that we can both be vulnerable in ways that that feel more real and authentic. And I think, actually, getting back to your first question, who, as far as who am I? I mean, I seek this authenticity in humans, and I know that includes our perfections and our imperfections. But there's a part of me that continuously keeps trying to deny the imperfection. And so I keep getting messages in my life over and over again. Talk about learning, right? Being lifetime learners. I keep not seeking out, I don't have to seek it out. The messages of how imperfect I am continue to come up over and over again.
Yeah. And I think in a lot of my work to evolve and grow and develop as a person, it's kind of been like this joke that your life is going to teach you the lesson. Like, it's going to keep on.
Totally.
Hello.
Totally.
Hello.
Yeah.
Are you going to get it this time?
Yeah.
I'm going to keep coming back.
Yeah.
It's like the most persistent teacher.
Yes. Yeah. How loud do I have to make it this time?
Yeah. How hard do I have to hit you this time for you to get it? Is the life speaking at us. And I love how you'd said that kind of like clicked an aha moment, as you said, someone who's, was put away for a long time, had history in the cartel, that what I heard is like, I know this person's going to accept me for who I am, and we're going to have some really interesting conversations because they're not going to judge me like someone who might present as perfect. And I would challenge to say that someone who comes off as not having a dark side, either, or like not having a dark side, or not having some of these deep traumas, and not having the dark side of humanity in them. Either they're denying it, and it's like a self-imposed ignorance that is a part of, eventually, whenever they do or don't grow and evolve in themselves as a human, to eventually see that that's going to be a part of withholding fulfillment in their own life. Or it's maybe like a trauma in itself to have not experienced that depth of the human experience. And when you had said, be more interested in speaking to that type of person who's experienced and lived that kind of darkness. I almost wonder if that's why I felt this like immediate, beautiful, non, like no strings attached acceptance from my in-laws just immediately. I was like, you guys don't even know me.
Aww.
And they're like, yeah. And like the episode that I have with my father-in-law, like I
Yeah,
thanked
yeah.
him for that. And he's like, it was easy. And I'm like, what do you, to me, like thinking, I'm like, what do you mean it was easy? I've never felt like my experience had been, it was easy for people to accept me. So then when you'd said that, I was like, that makes sense. Like they have all lived very rich lives of darkness and light and difficult experience and hardships that if they didn't accept people for who they were, they wouldn't have a family. They wouldn't have any relationships in their family. It would be like my dad's side of the family. Where it was like, oh, you did this thing that I don't like. I'm not going to talk to you for the rest of your life.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I think that was part of the beauty of what you said. That immediately clicked. I was like, that could be part of it is like, we're like, yeah, we're all humans.
Yeah.
And like in some of DJ's darkest moments in his life, one of his aunts said, you are just like us. Welcome to the family.
Aww.
And he was like, I don't think he liked that response. He was like, what do you mean? But it's also like see, you are also a human who has darkness.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah. It's sort of like, I see you right now.
Yeah. And I think it was meant in this beautiful and accepting way where he was like, no, I don't want to be dark. I don't want to have these hard things. I don't want to accept that I did this horrible thing that I don't like about myself that I haven't accepted. But yeah, we went on this beautiful tangent and thank you for going down that journey with me. I think that was a lovely little mini conversation. But I also don't want to take away from your story that you came to share too. So
I'm really good at deflecting. I learned from experts.
Well, I also immediately was like,
good too.
ooh, I like this little phrase. And I think we can go somewhere really cool with it for the sake of anyone listening. And I hope people found that enriching. But yeah, I'd love to dig into whatever story you joined to share. And wherever you'd like to start.
Okay. Well, I think I thought about this when you proposed this idea. And I started thinking about perfectionism. And I also think that there's some, just based on what you just said, I think there's some cultural elements to perfectionism and how certain cultures even define that. Some probably don't. I think my own dive into perfectionism and seeing it in my clients, knowing how that has shown up in their life and how they've denied it at times. I think what I've landed on recently is that I've done a lot of addiction work. I'm an addictions counselor as well. And so I see all humans as, and I can't use the word habitual. It just doesn't seem strong enough. I really do think we are addictive creatures. And there are some people in my life who 100% own that. And they have very behavioral addictions. They addict to substances or vices that are pretty destructive as far as, sex addiction or gambling or rage. And then there's a whole group of humans that I work with who have process addictions. And those fall more in the realms of the way they think and then show up in the world. But it's so natural and it's so non-threatening or non-lethal that they just don't recognize it until it's destructive in their own lives. And I think perfectionism is one of those process addictions that can become so intense that it becomes addictive. And there's so much crossover with other disorders like ADHD and OCD. And then there's some narcissistic qualities to perfectionism. Um, and I think my my understanding of how it develops for a lot of humans is that usually when it becomes more entrenched in your personality, you've most likely been exposed to some childhood trauma. You've had some insecure attachment issues, and you've got some people pleasing qualities as well that show up, and those are reinforced by doing things the correct or right way. And I think I got all those messages, and I think that there was something about my personality at a younger adult self that thought, I want to resist showing up in this little white girl blonde way in life. And I really gravitated towards the weird and the unusual and the people that they couldn't hide from um, their serious mistakes in life. And I felt, like I said earlier, comfort in sitting with that while denying my own. Oh, I'm going to be sort of the angel of mercy. I'm going to sit with these kinds of stories because I love these stories, but I'm still going to show up in my own life, in this way that's perfect, or what I construe as perfect, because I'll be accepted and loved, won't I? Well, that's just a bunch of bullshit. I'm not going to be accepted and loved in the way I was showing up. My perfectionism was critical and can still be. And it was also defined as my perfectionism. Somebody else saw something else that they wanted in me that was not perfect in their eyes. And so rejection would show up. I think that one of two very significant things that happened in my life that sort of catapulted me into more messiness was going through divorce after I was married to a wonderful man for 10 years. And today we're still friends. But my confusion of my own self, maybe even denying some of my own hidden shadows, we could even call it that, and wandering outside of my own marriage to fall in love with a woman who presented to me a lot of darkness that I was denying with my own self. It was sort of a mirror. Oh, I can see my own darkness through this person. And going through in my marriage, on and off again, connecting and disconnecting, separating, coming back again, going through that and just sinking into tremendous guilt, tremendous mistake, not understanding what was going on. Life was leading me. I was not leading life in those years. Then coming out of that, still on my feet, still a counselor, working with people, going through the parallel process of things going on with my life and people I was sitting with was astounding. And then finally being presented with something that was so physically non-perfect based on how I was defined in this world. I had had years of autoimmune disorders that I navigated through on my own quietly, in a holistic way, trying to fix all these things. And then coming out of just chaos in my life, just to then be handed alopecia, where within a 3-week period of time, losing 98% of my hair and being so exposed as somebody who is so private and tried to show up in this very, professional way. My clients were the ones that I think probably saved me from. I it sounds so ridiculous. It still sounds ridiculous, but I was I was suicidal in those years. I was a counselor, quietly suicidal, watching the transformation of my physical self change. I was no longer um, able to even achieve perfection in whatever that looked like. Um, I was working in the court system. I was in court 3 times a week and in 2 different clinics. And I went from having hair that looked much like this. This is a wig, much like this, to little bandanas, to finally a full bandana on my whole head. And I did that for an entire year. And living in that was that's a whole other psychological experiment in and of itself. But my clients would just keep showing up in their own imperfection, telling me their stories, not even skipping a beat as to seeing me any different. Telling me to get, tattoos on my skull, and just, it was astounding. The gifts I was given, seeing them see me in that. And that increased my connection with them. And I think increased my disconnection with people around me who I saw as perfect. I felt more and more distanced from them and more connected to mostly men that I was sitting and working with in the criminal system.
Mm-hmm.
I had one gentleman who stands out for me. He was he's no longer living. He unfortunately did overdose, but he had been a cage fighter and a tattoo artist. So he was covered head to toe in tattoos. And I remember one session, I was very caught up in whatever wig I was wearing at the time, if it looked okay. And he caught on early in the session. I had said something to him, I just don't know what's going on today. And he looked straight at me and he goes, Chris, people aren't thinking about you as much as you think they are. And I thought, touche, the student now becomes the teacher. And that's been constant in my life. I learned so much sitting with people, as I'm sure you do in what you produce.
Mm-hmm.
You learn so much about people, which in turn gives you the ability to learn so much about yourself when you are in that raw, authentic place. And someone has the ability to call you out on something in the way that you spend your days doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I knew he could. He had my grandfather's eyes, and I had a very strong connection with my grandfather, who was a recovered alcoholic. And that man that day, my client who called me out on that, I just was like, whew, you just put me right back where I needed to be.
Mm-hmm. What I think was there are a handful of things swirling around in my head, one of which that really, really stood out to me was these deeply imperfect humans who saw you for who you were in a time where you felt messy and exposed as imperfect. Yes. And that they saw you and they were like, it's fine.
Yes.
That's what you said. That was what built connection for me. And I think that's what authenticity and connection and like belonging is all about. Is being around people who are like, yeah, you're messed up, so am I. I see you.
I know.
And I still love you.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Like no matter what that situation is, and then realizing that was actually a mechanism for you to realize disconnection in the people who you didn't feel like accepted you for exactly who you were.
Yes.
And you had mentioned like your grandfather was a recovered alcoholic and had a deep connection with him. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if that was also part of what drew you to people who were like that. Cause I think for me, having such a deep connection with my uncle, who
Yes.
I've shared a few stories about
Yeah.
on this podcast. Deeply imperfect human, definitely also a perfectionist. And it was so
Yeah.
funny because he, like, the duality of this human of, he's like 6'10", 300 and some pounds,
Aw.
bald, handlebar mustache, fully tatted, like
Yeah.
had a 100th anniversary Harley, all of the chrome upgrades he could. Giant teddy bear.
Yeah.
So sweet, so tender, so gentle, and like so sensitive and so emotional. Also had addiction issues with prescription painkillers and collected Beanie Babies and cleaned his Harley with Q-tips. And,
I love the contrast.
it's so much contrast in a single human, and I loved that about him, and I still do, even though he's not around. Like, I just thought that was the coolest thing, of like seeing all these different sides of this person. And he like was covered in tattoos, and his mom hated that because my grandmother was definitely the epitome of perfectionism and like image, and our family needs to present a certain way, and like people are looking at us, and this is how we need to look. And like, I was sharing this story yesterday that when I was in high school, I wanted to join the football team. A good friend of mine had said, Gabby, you should join the football team. And I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. I bring it up to my family, and my grandma is like, you cannot do that. People are going to think you're a lesbian. And like, thinking it's so funny now to think that the worst possible outcome in her brain of me joining the football team would be that someone like mistaked my sexual identity or my sexual preferences. And but I loved having that duality in my life. And so when you shared that, and I kind of thought, I was like, oh, I wonder if part of your connection to your grandfather is like definitely a part of me loving the parts of myself that kind of like have so much duality and almost don't make sense together.
Totally.
Like was something that I loved about my uncle. So like even yesterday I was at an event, I'm wearing this sparkly dress that's super low cut, and I was like, I can't wait to be in sweatpants. Why am I not wearing leggings right now? I enjoyed this for 5 minutes. What am I doing? And, I love it. And being like the athletic person who can also like get dressed up, but I also like still really like heavy metal, and I used to ride my motorcycle. I miss having a motorcycle, but like all these different parts of like but also I'm like a dancer, and like having these multiple parts of like my identity that sometimes the way that we see people, like they don't make sense together. Just based on the culture that has been created and presented. And I similarly like feel drawn towards people who are like, here I am.
I know.
I'm imperfect. And I wonder if that's part of my curiosity of like what will be my informal research of this space is I'm very suspicious that we as people are really just seeking authentic connection.
I agree.
Where we can be our messy, imperfect selves and people still accept us. Like that's what we want at the deepest level. And that's what I was hearing from you.
And as you're speaking, I'm also thinking, I'm no perfectionist when it comes to accepting people in a perfectly authentic way, because I think, boy, we really struggle too with what I miss so much about working with the men. I don't work in the criminal justice system as much anymore, very, very little. And I left that, and I left it so burned out that I thought, oh, this is great. I'm going to work for myself now. I can better choose who I sit with, and I didn't realize I was taking out a substantial part of who I was. I love my clients now. I love working with them, but I also removed something that reminded me not only of my imperfections, and my authenticity and how I show up. Sitting with a client who has a pretty bad track record in the criminal system, they are not going to connect with you unless you are showing them some things about yourself. You get very good at being able to disclose appropriately as a therapist with that population and speaking from a very raw place. Well, clients coming in to see me now, they want to see me as, you better have your shit together because I got to go out there and figure stuff out, and you better have the answers. They don't say those things, but it's sort of an unspoken idea. And when I left that, I left parts of these behind, and I miss it. I also thought I learned so much about men and man culture. And I stepped out of that thinking, oh, I understand men. And when I went back into the dating world and dating exclusively men, thinking, oh, I have this understanding about their inner world and their working. Well, man, time and time again in my dating years have I been told, you don't know diddly squat, Chris, about any of this. And if you think you do, I'm going to tell you how much you don't. And getting and feeling that rejection over and over again. Rejection to a perfectionist is like,
it's like a kryptonite. Like it's killer.
It's killer.
Don't go anywhere just yet. We'll be back with the rest of this conversation in just a moment. So I want to first thank you so much for spending your time here with me on the Nexus of Narratives. I know time is one of our most valuable resources, if not our most valuable resource. And so I'm grateful for you sharing your time with me and my guests on the Nexus of Narratives. Other ways to support that are deeply meaningful is I invite you to join our Patreon community. It's an incredible growing community of people who are seeking to create and cultivate belonging and connection and bring people together across different belief systems. So join us for tiers start at $1 a month. And that is for pre-release episodes, bonus content, additional conversations, live Q&As, live streams, and opportunities to join as a virtual audience to live recordings and ask questions to the person being interviewed and me while we're in the space together. Additionally, you can learn more about the podcast, find other ways to listen and other ways to support by going to www.nexusofnarratives.org. And also, last but not least, if you would like any coaching or consulting from me personally, I would love to support you as a person and your work in the community or in your businesses. So for ways to connect with me to support your personal, professional, or business growth, you can reach out to me on my website or visit my website, www.thenexusimpact.com. And links to those different sites, Patreon, Nexus of Narratives website, and the Nexus Impact website are in the show notes, linked below if you're on a device that scrolls. So thank you again for your time and enjoy the rest of this incredible episode.
And so coming back from that over and over again, while also seeing myself in this physical imperfection, and knowing that, I present well, but this is not who I am. I'm just covering up these ways that I need to tell people this is what I really am. Are you going to accept me or not? And I think there's so much pain out there right now for people. I actually think that I read something the other day about how women do have, they're struggling with perfectionism far more than men. But I honestly think that I see men in more pain than women. They are struggling so bad. They have no idea what the hell they're doing out there. Women typically find themselves in therapy more oftentimes than men, and they are willing to say, man, I am really raw right now, I'm really struggling. We have the ability to do it more so.
And it's more culturally accepted.
It is.
Whereas I feel like what I've noticed culturally is if men do that, then it's like, oh, come on, man up, you're weak, it's,
Totally.
whatever.
Yeah.
But that's no. That's also still part of the human experience.
Yeah.
is having these feelings and not shoving them down. Which one of my beliefs is like that's where a lot of like the outlash and the anger and the like people will be like, oh, I don't know why that person snapped. Is like, well, I think they spent a really long time shoving.
Totally.
And now they're a pressure cooker who just exploded under all of the pressure, as opposed to like being in an environment where it's like, there's a tender part of you that needs to be held and loved because you're a human.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to how you were talking about perfectionism and like showing up and trying to present as a perfectionist, because it was something that came to my mind, and I'm curious of your experience, and then I'll share mine. Is what do you think like influenced, whether it's like an event or patterns or beliefs about yourself, like that have influenced the perfectionism and like the desire to be accepted? Because you said like rejection is like poison to a perfectionist. I want to dig into that and like the beliefs that lie underneath that, because I think that's something that would be really rich to dig into.
So thank you for you're really good at bringing it back, because I can web and weave so many things together. And then I'm like, where did I just go? So you're looking for pivotal situations that could have encompassed that rejection, that experience of rejection?
Well, sure. Like if you wanted to share a specific moment, I want to like dig underneath that phrase of like rejection is like poison to a perfectionist.
Okay.
Like I want to understand like what you mean by that. What are some different like for you to feel that? What were some different beliefs that like have created that for you?
Yeah. I think honestly, it's what would the word be? It's just defeating. You keep thinking you're doing what you're supposed to do. I'm showing up. I'm doing this thing, right? I'm doing this thing for my family. I'm doing this thing in my marriage or this relationship or my work. And then in these slight little nuanced ways, people tell you, oh no, you're not what I'm looking for, or family members just not getting you. And if you're a perfectionist, you're going to look for those little nuances. You're so hyper attuned to those ways that you missed the mark, and you internalize that. And it can make you either overcompensate even more. Oh, well, I'm going to be just that much more perfect the next time. Right. Or freeze. I think there's a lot of perfectionists out there who they're like, I'm not going to do anything, because if I do something, then I can't fail. And as far as I know, I'm still perfect in that thing that I never do.
And what was that like for you? What do you think you were seeking in some of those like moments of trying to be okay, I'm going to do it better?
Got it.
This next time or whatever. Like what do you think you were looking for?
I think acceptance, just love, acceptance, being seen as valuable, being I think I can thrive on needing to be needed. When I think you've over-identified with a certain construct in life, you don't even know you're doing it, over and over again. If your value and your worth is tied up in showing up in a certain way, it just becomes so normal you just keep doing that.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like that's what it was for you? Like your value and your worth was tied into that?
Yeah.
I resonate with that. And that's why I
Yeah.
wanted to ask of like your experience in particular, because I feel a lot of relation and I know what my experience is. And I'm like, I wonder if it's similar. Because for me, and like we connected on me joking I'm a recovering perfectionist.
Yes.
And it still shows up very robustly in my life. And even in the latest, I did a like 90-day leadership like goal setting and achieving program. And I set these like astronomical goals that even our facilitator, he was like, are you sure you want to do that? And then like during our like celebration event, he was like, I didn't know if you were like a person who was talking a really big game because you were like, I'm gonna be better, and then like under delivers, underperforms. But like I hit all but one of my goals, and I missed my one goal by like 1 mark. It was so close. And I realized through this process is like, because then I was sick for 3.5 weeks. Through it. And then the extreme measures that I took to still achieve my goals despite having this huge hurdle. And I can't remember the exact phrase right now, but it was in the sense of you don't need to be the highest achiever to be enough. Like we'll accept you either way.
Yes.
Bawling. Oh my God. It's like whether you do all of these things or you don't, you're still enough. Whether you like your accomplishments, like whether you achieve the thing or not, like they said, what does it mean about you? It's like, then they said nothing. And I'm like, what do you mean nothing? Means everything. Did I do it? Like, and so through that, I had realized this really big part of myself that it's like, if I'm this high achiever, if I do all of these things, and it's a pattern through my life too, is like, I didn't need to graduate with my bachelor's degree in 3 years and like max out my credits and max out my summer credits. But then because I maxed out my credits, I took classes at the community college to transfer because then I couldn't take any more classes at the university. And so to get my degree in 3 years, to be one of the few undergrads who was published in a scientific paper, who like did research, like have awards that I forgot that I even had. And and I need to, have these life things happen by this time and have all of these accomplishments by this time to be outstanding.
Oh, wow.
And why?
Yes.
So that people would be like, wow, she's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah.
And that was like my perfection showing up. And I'm pretty sure I was a horrible person to be around in all of those moments. And what some of the things that you were even sharing about, like, okay, well, if I show up this way, like to me, how it would come up for me is, oh, but if I show up like this, then will you accept me? Then will you love me? And it even came up in friendships that be like, oh, okay, well, if I'm the person who's like providing all of the food and getting all of these things and doing all of these things for you, providing all of these things for you, then you're going to love me and accept me. And then when I had reached my limit to be like, okay, I'm giving.
Yes.
What about when I need? And then, but that's not the relationship that I had created. And then for them to be like, what are you talking about? And then I'm like, well, I don't want to talk to you anymore then. Like, F you. I don't want to be around you. Like, and like, oh, interesting. Rather than like just being me, being authentic, being whatever roller coaster of things were going on, and accepting that. What I've realized is I've been spending all of this time trying to outwardly project to receive acceptance, because then maybe I'd feel like I was enough.
Yes.
As opposed to just like accepting me from the beginning and believing that I'm enough. in myself and acting out of that would show up
Mhm.
very differently.
Yeah.
Which is still something that I need to figure out how to do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
'cause I'll do things about, like, yeah, I'm creating balance, I'm doing balance, and it's like, but you just set all of these ridiculous goals, and I'm like, no, it's fine,
Yeah.
but it's gonna be balanced this time.
And you need a room full of people to look at you and say, "You're good the way you are." Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I know it's because, like, that's not something that I had gotten, was I hadn't realized how pervasive some
Mhm.
of the beliefs were that came from my childhood of
Yes.
needing to look a certain way, needing to
Yep.
act a certain way, needing to achieve certain grades, needing to get certain awards,
Yeah.
different things
Mhm.
that I thought, especially having a fractured relationship with my father, or no
Yes.
relationship with my father, being like, yeah, I've already decided that guy sucks or
Yeah.
whatever. Like,
Yeah.
decided I'm not going to accept whatever he said. Like, it's still pervasive
Yeah.
in my belief systems about myself, even
Mhm.
today. And I had
100%.
undermined that.
Mhm.
And so that's like a dark part of me that I need to have realized I need to accept, is
Yeah.
like, that is still pervasive. So
Yeah.
how am I going to show up differently?
Mhm.
But I do think it's interesting that some of the flavors of perfectionism are still the same,
Mhm.
of what I've heard from you and what I've experienced of myself,
Mhm.
and what it sounds like you've experienced of clients, despite the actual situation that comes up.
Yeah.
Because then now, like, hearing this, there's a part of me that I almost wanted, like, if I see someone who's a perfectionist, I want to just go up and be like, I love you for who you are.
I know.
I know. Yeah, you can mess up. It's
Exactly.
okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And probably a reaction similar to what I would provide, of being like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
And um, I suppose, what has that looked like for you? What has that kind of growth of perfectionism looked like for you, or some of those
Mhm.
pieces of your life?
Um, boy, um, I think, I try a when I heard you talking about the goals in your workshop, right? You're putting together these goals. It reminded me of, I think I used to see other women like you when I was younger, thinking, "Boy, if I could just be more extroverted, if I could just be, smarter." Um, Smarter was always a big one. Always wanted to be, I have 2 bachelor's degrees and 2 master's degrees. That what for, other than debt, right? It it was always wanting to believe that I could do more and do better, and, um, comparing myself to women that had things that I didn't have, that created families that were able to sustain those families, or to sustain those marriages. Um, I think there's a part of me that at times has given up. Just, I'm not even gonna try to be. I'm just gonna coast with as much as I can to just get by. I'm too tired. It's too exhausting at this point to try and show up for whoever or whatever needs to show up as. And I've always had really strong women around me, um, as mentors or colleagues, our mutual friend being one of them, who just would sit and say to me, "You're amazing. I love you the way you are," and just not buying it. I'm like, "I'm not buying it. I see what you do in life and how you show up for so many humans, and I don't either have the energy or the, um, mainly the energy, either the internal energy or the mental energy, to keep doing that as you do." And so I think I've had to do a lot of self compassion. I've had to create the room that you were sitting in, of the people telling you you are good enough. I've had to create my own little room in my own little head and heart, I guess, to say, "Chris, you don't have to go overboard. You don't have to. This person can take what you have to offer them. And if it's not enough, and they leave, so be it. You've had your heart broken enough times now, or you feel like you've shown up enough for clients that wound up dying. They didn't make it to the other side of their addiction. Your showing up has no bearing on the outcome of this right now. And so I think it's starting to detach, how I show up with absolutely no known outcome on the other side of that. It doesn't matter how perfect I think I show up or how much I give. People are still going to make their decisions based on things that they've got going on and where their heart is and what they seek that they think I don't have. And no matter how much that hurts in the end, um, and I've been able to do that with some relationships in my life, and some relationships still hit hard. I too have an estranged relationship with my father. I hold that in a place of I send you love, and I also know that there's nothing I can say or do that's going to change how I feel about the relationship that we do or don't have.
Mm-hmm.
There's I'm sure there's people probably listening to your podcast who know Pema Chodron. Pema Chodron's a Buddhist nun who writes some amazing books, and she would always say, just try and touch everything lightly with a feather, the tip of a feather. Just imagine touching everything with the tip of a feather. And I not only visualize that many times throughout my week, but I remind myself of that. You cannot keep touching everything in life, Chris, with a steel hammer. It's not gonna.
I feel that's so deep.
It's
in my
not gonna.
soul.
It's not gonna get you where you need to go.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel very called out. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you saying
Good.
that. Yeah. Even 2 nights
Yeah.
ago, a conversation with my husband where
Yeah.
he's like, you don't need to do all that
Yeah.
of just like, because I said, this conversation didn't have to turn out like this. He's like, you're the one who asked the question.
Right, we step on it.
Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I need to know the exact depth of all of the layers of exactly what you said and the exact nuance because I'm making up stories in my head and I need to know exactly what you meant. He's like, well, isn't this a great invitation for you to do your own work? I'm like, how dare you?
Yeah.
Him just
Yeah.
being like, I'm not going to give that to you. And me with my steel, like, give it to me, give it to me.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh, I love it. Yeah. Yeah. And I do couples work, which is astoundingly weird because of my own coupling in life. And I'm just fascinated with couples and how they, and I can see these extremes just sitting right in front of me. I have this wonderful acknowledgement of men who can be so present and be like, the difference between men and women when they walk into a room, quite honestly, is women see all the details and all the things that they would want to adjust and find out more about that thing over there in the corner. Men walk into a room and they're like, that couch looks really comfortable. I'm going to sit in it. That's it. And I'm navigating through that when I do couples work, with two people over and over again, heterosexual, when I'm looking at, or energies, male and female energy in the room. They could be the same sex. It doesn't even matter. But trying to see how they show up in these ways where somebody is so tightly woven into, let's do this in this very, perfect way and see all these new, and the other one's like, let's just see what the heck happens. And I'm just like, oh my God, how did these two people meet, first of all?
Yeah. I feel like we're certainly the polar opposite humans too. Yeah. Oh yeah. In all of the ways. But it's so wonderful.
It's so great. That's cool.
But I'm going to ask you the same questions that I ask everyone who joins, is for anyone listening who can relate to any part of anything that you've shared, how can your stories create connection for people?
I think everyone should just start talking about the ways that they're not perfect. I have a client actually I'm working with last night. I saw her and she's amazing. She's amazing and she doesn't see her own amazingness. And she said, we all walk around all day long in this way where we don't show how am I supposed to talk to people about my imperfections when nobody talks about it? And I'm like, that's the problem. Nobody's talking about it. I'm so lucky in the work that I do because people talk to me about their imperfections all day long. But we aren't doing that out there. And I said, chances are there are at least 25 people in your day that are feeling as imperfect as you. And say something. Just open up. Be more vulnerable. That vulnerability, I think, is it could actually save somebody from going down a pretty dark rabbit hole.
Yeah.
At times.
I joke with my friend about belligerent authenticity.
Yes.
How out of that, exactly what you said, I've worked on practicing that too. And I think it's a beautiful invitation for greater connection. It's the amount of connection, deeper connections that I've developed since working on showing up more authentically, being like, yeah, here are my imperfections. Here I am as I am. It has created some of the most beautiful connections. And it has also made it very clear who isn't ready for that.
Yes.
And some of those more
doubt.
superficial relationships, I'm like, okay, I know where they are. Like, at least I know where we stand. And that's fine.
Totally.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And for anyone, again, sticking with who can relate, maybe feels currently in a relatable place to anywhere you've been, is what might you say to a past version of yourself?
Oh my goodness. Wow, don't keep going to school, Chris. There's nothing more you're going to learn in there. Most of what I do as a counselor was never even, I think I ditched textbooks the very next day when I graduated. My life gave me the experiences that I needed and at times shown me the experiences that I've lacked. Now I sit with other humans. And so I think time and time again, I would have tried to find, muster up the energy it will take or the bravery it will take to go out there and experience the world and the humans in it. Don't keep going to school thinking you have to be smarter and that you're going to be accepted and loved by being smarter with more, degrees after your name. That's what I would have, without a doubt, said to my past self.
Speaking straight to me.
Right there.
This is one of my coaches had joked. So how many more degrees do you need to believe that you're enough to go and just do the thing that you're already doing? Just go do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, how dare you? Okay.
Yeah, because right in that, it's confirmation that they're not impressed,
right,
by all your degrees,
also like,
right?
how dare you? These are the most expensive pieces of paper that I own.
Right?
And then also the side of, as someone who has employed highly educated people, is there is something really incredible that happens when we overeducate and underexperience ourselves.
Yes.
And it is extremely challenging to lead people like that.
Yeah.
Because, and I've been that person. It's like, but the book says this. And it's like, okay, lesson number one, you got to throw out the book with humans. It's all theory.
Totally.
Like,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
We've got to see what's going on right now, and we've got to juggle whatever knowledge we've got and build experiences, because probably whatever knowledge we have is not going to be right.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's even like whether that's in the like psychology and neuroscience side, or if that's in the like in my organizational leadership side of being like, yeah, we're going to go in and like create a plan for how to develop these teams to be closer and like work better together. First thing you got to do, throw the textbooks out the window. Good job on knowing all of these theories, but here's a group of humans who are different than those theories that were developed. So we've got to like have the flexibility.
Yeah.
Education is fantastic. Also not going to save you.
Yeah. I love that word, flexibility. Mental and relational flexibility and spatial, just creating space in our own we need more of that.
Yeah.
With ourselves and teams we work on and humans we interact with.
And that's also part of my challenge with our Western culture. I'm going to make this as short of a tangent as possible for the sake of time of anybody listening, is like one of my soapboxes, especially like thinking about equity and access, is there's so much richness in the way that we can gain education in life through life experience, but then also through all the technology and access to information that we have now, that I think having a demand for a degree is extremely outdated now. That can go online and get that education, and if you're really driven to do it, you can do it pretty quickly.
Totally.
And a lot of people don't have the money to pay for that. Like, it's not accessible. And sure, there's grants and scholarships, but then also, is that knowledge of the access to those resources accessible? Not really. And so we're actually doing ourselves a disservice by creating some of those barriers to access by saying you need like this degree in order to enter this space. Like, there's certain spaces, you should probably like have gone to medical school to operate on somebody. Like, there are some some pieces there, but in a lot of trades and such, it's very specialized information that can be gathered in different ways. Anyways, my mini soapbox. For next question is, I think you already answered this in a few different ways earlier, but I'll still ask it, is what did you need to feel most connected to people around you?
What did I need, or what do I need?
Do. Yeah. It's probably not different.
Well, I would have to say, I think you've given me one of my biggest ones, and that is just the acknowledgement that I'm unique enough to warrant wanting to listen and to be understood. I think as somebody who would listen quite a lot in life and sort of be, on the periphery of others and just watch and observe, you feel, sort of like a shadow of yourself in the background, and I really did need people to be like, hey, you back there, come here, the quiet one in the back, come sit up here and tell me something about yourself. I think the people that want and desire and need so much more connection in this world are the ones that are quieter, the ones that they're not standing out front, they're not the loudest, they're not the smartest, in some ways. But they have a lot of intelligence by watching in the background and observing.
I agree. Completely.
So thank you.
Yeah, that would be a great takeaway for people, and thank you for your openness. And last but not least, as I like to joke, if anyone's still listening and they're like, these two are off the rockers, I can't relate to a single thing they've said, and I think they're bananas. How can your story create connection for people across different belief systems?
Oh boy, I would say check back, listen to this podcast, and in another 5 years or 10 years, you may have an experience that's completely relatable. There is something that doesn't say at some point in time, you just haven't had something that would identify with what we're talking about yet.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I've actually, someone else had said almost the same exact thing. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Listen back. Maybe a different thing will resonate with you at a different time.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. It's sort of like when clients, I'll say something to them one day, and they'll carry on with what they're talking about, completely sort of dismissing what I've just said. And then 5 months later, they come in and they say some version of what I said 5 months ago. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's so brilliant. Good idea. And I'm like, they weren't ready for it. We're ready when we're ready.
And that's almost like part of what I've learned of my own kind of perfectionism, and especially doing so much growth as a human. And I can only imagine, as someone who's a psychotherapist, to be like, I can see your patterns. I see you. I just need you to
Oh man, yeah, you can define.
Don't like talk about like hammer or like
Like my relationships. Yes.
and
Yeah.
I'm just gonna feed you this thing
Yeah.
that you really need, and just like a cat, like
Exactly.
I'm not ready for it.
Exactly.
And then
Yeah.
eventually, when that thing comes up, wow!
Wow.
I'm so happy for
Yeah.
you. That's great. Like, and to like be able to genuinely like hold that and demonstrate that has got to be a challenge.
Yeah.
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 Well, thank you so much.
Thank
This has been
you.
such a delight and
Oh,
such
yeah.
amazing conversation, like side conversations that have come out of it. I'm
I
so
know.
grateful
I
for that.
agree. I agree.
Is there
Thank you.
anything else you would like to share before we stop?
No, I don't think so. I've just enjoyed this time. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
enjoyed it too. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
So we'll have to have more conversations
Yeah.
on tangential. We can
Oh,
focus on being
gosh.
tangential
Oh, I love
at
it.
another time.
Yeah.
And
You're good.
weave
You
whatever we'd like.
keep in there.
Well, thank you.
That is a wrap. What an amazing conversation. And thank you again for taking your time to listen and join us here on the Nexus of Narratives. I do hope this conversation was incredibly enriching for you and that it offered some insight, tools, and resources that you can carry to the rest of your day and other areas of your life to create enriching, connective experiences all around you. I want to offer a special thank you to my dear friend Rowan, who is my co-host in the opening and closing moments of each episode, but then also for carrying the conversations on Patreon with me. Like really tremendous episodes, and it's amazing to have another person to do that with. So thank you to Rowan. That's a huge time commitment that they share as well. And thank you to my sweet and talented husband, DJ, who works tirelessly to do the best that he can to make this audio on these episodes the best that it can be, and also for creating the music that is used in this podcast. So enjoy and have a wonderful rest of your week, and look forward to seeing you back for the next episode or just seeing you on Patreon soon.